Hello everyone, today we are starting the story of a powerful mage named Reinhardt. He is seen as the Demon King because he helps otherworldly creatures. A group of heroes arise to defeat him, and while Reinhardt manages to seriously wound them, he is ultimately killed by the martial king Teslan. But before dying, Reinhardt casts a spell to go back in time. When he wakes up, he finds himself in the body of Teslan, the one who tried to kill him and the strongest warrior on the continent. Join us as we delve further into the story. Please leave a like as today's like goal is 1,500 likes. Hit the subscribe button for more videos. So let's start the story without any delay. The tale begins with a great monster rampaging through the capital of the Antares Empire, Rifenheim, destroying everything in its path. Hundreds of equally formidable beasts accompany it, causing widespread havoc. Meanwhile, the human king states that his army of nearly 2 million soldiers is being utterly defeated by this single summoned demon and its powerful beasts. His commander reports that 200,000 knights have perished and over 300,000 have been severely injured from the wide-range magic attack and the summoning. Listening to reports, the human king declares that the demon king has brought ruin to their nation and painted the world with evil. Nevertheless, he remains confident that this evil will soon come to an end. He is certain that the demon king will die at the hands of true heroes. His general concurs, attributing it all to his majesty's wisdom. Meanwhile, in the heart of the great demonic palace Gerak, within the Hall of Abyss, a group of heroes confront the demon king Reinhardt, who sits calmly on his throne. Among them, hero Alex von Halain addresses the monarch as the evil king, declaring that his time to return to the darkness has come. The Sword Saint Cyrus readies his blade, declaring that they will eliminate the demon king and bring an end to this dark empire. Reinhardt, visibly disturbed, considers it too upsetting, expressing the considerable effort he has invested in constructing the empire. He questions why they label it an evil empire when it is named Antares, pointing out that the sun rises here as well, if they know. The martial king Teslan yells, accusing Reinhardt of raising demons in his empire, asserting that once he is gone, the corrupt monster's demonic nature will disappear as well. Reinhardt retorts that he only taught them human tactics. He adds that they have spent their entire lives being mistreated, so he taught them how to retaliate. Now they are labeled as corrupt, but they are merely doing what humans do. Reinhardt then asks if they have already defeated his 4 heavenly kings. Cyrus responds that those filthy orcs couldn't withstand his sword. Surprised, Reinhardt inquires if the brave orc warrior Tathid is truly dead. He emphasizes that despite their barbaric appearance, orcs are a hunter-gatherer species that never betray their own kind. They protect the weak and challenge the strong. Furious, he demands to know why these heroes speak of them as if they are monsters. Well, they don't wash regularly, so they are dirty, but still. Teslan laughs, mentioning that they also dealt with that sickening monstrous troll, who was finally paid for their sins. Reinhardt, surprised to hear that Gruta Thilka is dead too, remarks that trolls may look intimidating, but isn't he being too harsh? He insists they are simply nature lovers who focus on spirituality. The Saintess Ellen announces that the evil dwarf who worshipped the god of darkness has also been brought to justice. Reinhardt's face pales upon hearing that even Michelin is dead. He questions when a god of dwarves became a god of darkness, accusing them of arrogance for believing that any gods other than the Sayer and the 12 gods are evil. The Mage of Light, Jade Archlight, also tells Reinhardt that they have killed the corrupt dark elf, mentioning that she was no match for his magic. Reinhardt, furious at the thought of her death, declares they are begging to die for killing Cyrus. Teslan taunts him, saying he's finally showing his true colors. He insists that the dark elf was a demon who fell to the dark side, and they have no pity for such monsters. Reinhardt retorts that just because her skin was darker doesn't mean she was evil. He explains that humans cut down all the trees, forcing her to evacuate to barren lands. She was a pure-blood high elf who just happened to be tan. The heroes ready themselves, with Alex declaring that he will avenge the dead with his sword. Reinhardt asks who will avenge the other species. Alex responds that such a question is despicable, insisting that if it weren't for Reinhardt, the other species wouldn't have suffered. Reinhardt, realizing they won't listen, begins to release his aura. He explains that the other species desire nothing more than to live free and not as slaves, and for this they are deemed worth killing. He declares that he will become the king they believe him to be if that is how they want it. With a surge of magic, he launches the heroes into the air. Tears stream down his face as Reinhardt explains that he was once just an ordinary great mage, although being a great mage is nothing very ordinary. He then prepares a high-level magic while recounting how humans are inherently racist, viewing other species as nothing but pure evil slaves. However, he got to know them and witnessed the depth of their cultures. He even learned spiritual magic from the elves and sorcery from the trolls, and by combining both, he was able to reach 10th circle magic for the first time in history. He continued to interact with them that changed his outlook on life, and he could no longer watch them being treated as slaves, and therefore he began to rescue them. However, as his territory grew, it became harder to evade the humans' watchful eye. They began sending knights to raid them, forcing them to flee elsewhere. This cycle repeated itself, but they started to fight back, gradually increasing their size and taking more land. Eventually, it became the Antares Empire. He adds that he didn't establish the Antares Empire out of hatred for humans. Rather, he simply believed that other species were inferior to humans. They didn't retaliate against humans, and this was the outcome. Their civilization was continuously attacked. He understands that humans fear them, but he finds it unacceptable that they would kill his people. He tells the heroes that he has a duty to protect his empire. With a swift strike, he sends Alex rolling away and mocking him by saying he was just a hero in name. He remarks that heroes only survive until the end in stories. In reality, they die early. Moments later, he dispatches all of them, leaving only Teslan, who is exceptionally strong. While the others were weak, Teslan proves to be different. He rushes at Reinhardt and smashes the ground in front of him, causing a massive section of the palace to collapse. Reinhardt is forced to distance himself as an explosion erupts from the side of the palace. He lands outside only to see Teslan coming at him with the force of a people's elbow. Reinhardt quickly puts up a barrier, but Teslan confidently declares victory. Suddenly, Reinhardt transforms into a Glomba, bluffing and asking if that's all Teslan has. However, in reality, his spine is broken and he realizes he cannot win. Teslan begins to walk towards him, declaring that he will send him to his judgment. Reinhardt concedes, affirming Teslan's victory with a brief acknowledgement of good for you. Still furious, Teslan declares that Reinhardt's defeat will liberate the others from their demonic restraints. Reinhardt grits his teeth, mentioning that he was going to give up, but he will not, knowing it means his people will revert back into slaves. He pulls out an artifact, claiming it's the Eye of Time and Space, a relic beyond even his 10th circle's comprehension. When Teslan demands to know his intentions, Reinhardt explains it's a time and space regression spell that will rewind time. As he begins to activate it, uncertain if it will succeed, Teslan leaps at him. Despite their fierce struggle, neither backs down. Teslan's punch breaks through the magic barrier as Reinhardt reiterates his refusal to meet his end like this. They both scream as a massive shockwave erupts from their collision. A blinding light forms from their collision, then explodes, sending out a massive wave of light. Birds chirp in the serene forest surroundings, enveloping a cozy log cabin. Reinhardt gradually awakens, feeling warmth spread through him as he opens his eyes in surprise at his success. Uncertain of his location, he muses that he doesn't recall such a place from his past and questions his current age. Rising from bed, he admires his physique but expresses distaste for the excess muscle, deeming it unnecessary for a mage. As he observes his body in the mirror, Reinhardt indulges in a bit of humble bragging. He reminisces about his youth when his charming physique swept numerous ladies off their feet, and when he got older, he got cooler and made several elves cry. However, as he scrutinizes the face before him, he wonders why his face looks so stupid compared to back then. He muses, where did his once statuesque-like features go as, in his eyes, his body now resembles more of a statue than a person. Doubt creeps in as he questions what went wrong if his space regression spell failed. Is that why he is in someone else's body? Gradually, the features before him become more recognizable, and he realizes with certainty that he's actually inside Teslan's body. Out of the blue, a voice calls for Teslan, leading to a giant old man leaning his head into the doorframe. He reminds Teslan that the sun is up and questions why he isn't outside yet, urging him to seize the day. Confused, Reinhardt asks the old man who he is, thinking him a monster. This prompts the giant man to express annoyance, questioning why he is looking at him as if it's their first encounter. Reinhardt responds honestly, stating that he genuinely doesn't know him. The giant man hushes Reinhardt, reminding him that he has already used amnesia as an excuse twice before. With a click of his tongue, he dismisses any further use of this excuse, asserting that it's time to get going. He then gestures to Reinhardt's head, comparing it to a basketball, and insists that it's time for training. As he is dragged along by the old man, Reinhardt reflects on the situation, coming to the realization that this giant man is likely Teslan's teacher, the continent's strongest martial artist of all time, Gerard Crompretes. Gerard ties Reinhardt to a treaty who attempts to explain the situation to him. However, Gerard interrupts, commanding him to be silent and remarking on his unusually talkative demeanor. Grabbing a piece of bamboo, Gerard declares that it's time to train. Reinhardt grunts in pain as the sound of strikes hitting his stomach fills the air. Tears well up in his eyes as he struggles to comprehend what is happening. More blows rain down on him, and he fears that this may be how he meets his end. Gerard notices Teslan's softer demeanor and wonders if he truly has amnesia. He reflects on their martial clan's mantra of being unbreakable and their rigorous training regimen, acknowledging that memory loss has occurred among their ranks in the past. He scoffs, deeming beating him up the easy solution. He asserts that humans resort to using weapons and wearing armor because of their perceived weakness and lack of physical prowess. However, he dismisses these as excuses, emphasizing that martial artists train to overcome their weaknesses. Reinhardt finds himself dumbfounded, considering this the first time he's encountered such simplistic and nonsensical reasoning in his entire life. Gerard continues his tirade, likening humans to steel and insisting that the more they are struck, the stronger they become. Reinhardt internally scoffs, viewing Gerard as an old geezer, questioning his wisdom. How are people same as steel? Gerard reaffirms to Reinhardt that he is the student he has chosen, confident in his belief that he has no physical limits. Gerard assures him that he can become steel. Despite Reinhardt's protests, he continues to rain blows upon him, all the while rambling on about his beliefs. Later in the day, after beating him thoroughly, Gerard tells Reinhardt that the training is over for today and he can go inside to rest. Exhausted, Reinhardt lies on the ground, marveling at the fact that he's not dead despite the severe beating. He sits on his knees, hugs himself, and sarcastically thanks his body for being so tough. Afterward, he heads back and gets into the tub, quickly realizing that he's bathing in a healing potion made from garrow leaves and petals. He marvels at the thought, knowing that a bottle of healing potion costs 10 silver coins, and here he is, soaking in an entire tub of it. Amused, he recalls how the queen supposedly bathes in milk, which pales in comparison to this luxurious treatment. Curious, he asks Gerard what's in the bath. Gerard responds that you need to cool steel after hammering it. Reinhardt realizes that this means the training session isn't just brutish. It has an actual method behind it. Having fought Teslan before, he understands his strength and is convinced that this rigorous training is the reason for it. As he relaxes in the bath, Reinhardt wonders about the changes happening to his body. He contemplates whether his younger self still exists and considers two hypotheses. Either he coexists with his younger self, or his younger body now houses Teslan's soul. The next morning, Gerard offers Reinhardt a huge plate of food, insisting he needs to replenish his nutrients. After Reinhardt finishes eating, Gerard suggests going on a light jog to help with digestion. They jog lightly up a mountain. Gerard then asks if he feels tired or if they should continue with their morning training. Reinhardt initially says no, but then changes his mind, wondering how long this brutish training will continue. Later, exhausted, he collapses into bed, frustrated and resentful about being stuck in this body. As he leaps to a corner of the room, he starts to wonder what influence this will have moving forward. He considers running away, feeling the urge to escape. He ponders, in the case he exists as he did in the past, what will happen if he encounters his younger self. He reflects that teenage Reinhardt doesn't become active as a mage until 10 years later. He imagines him spending his days studying hard, immersed in books at the Delphia Magic Tower, concluding that they won't possibly bump into each other. He wonders what if Teslan has taken control of his body, then he will definitely come for him. He reflects that Teslan's strength comes from having his body trained with Jim Unbreakable, so there won't be much he can do with his weak body. Jim Unbreakable is a training method Teslan definitely needs the master's help for, and he believes there's no way Teslan can do it alone. Still, a part of him thinks that Teslan might be able to find a way. In the dead of night, he stealthily slips out of the house, cautiously ensuring Gerard isn't lurking outside. His sole intention is to break free from this confinement. Upon confirming Gerard's absence, he bolts away with unwavering determination. As he runs, an eerie aura trails behind him. Suddenly, to his astonishment, Gerard materializes on a nearby rock, intercepting his escape. Bewildered, Reinhardt wonders how Gerard managed to track him down. Gerard calmly inquires where is he going, leaving Reinhardt baffled. Gerard remarks on Reinhardt that after a couple of months of silence, he is fleeing again. He questions if this is his 9th attempt, sarcastically noting that they are on the verge of reaching double digits. Reinhardt asserts that he's honestly not the boy named Teslan. His name is Reinhardt, and he's a mage. However, Gerard believes he's just concocting a story to escape. Reinhardt is puzzled. He struggles to understand why Gerard won't believe him. Gerard references Teslan's earlier assertion of hailing from another world and encountering dragons and gods, followed by his claim of being an active master who reincarnated in a place called Murim in the Huan Empire of the Eastern Continent. Patting Reinhardt's head, Gerard acknowledges that he's a bit convincing this time and that he's improved in terms of acting. He then orders Reinhardt to return inside the house and get some sleep, and to make sure that he would come back, he pulled Reinhardt with him along. Despite acknowledging his failure at prison breaking for the day, Reinhardt continues to plan his escape for the following day with unwavering determination to succeed. He remains confident that he won't be trapped here forever. Many days pass, marked by various training sessions for Reinhardt, yet he persists in his attempts to escape. However, Gerard always catches him in the act. Eventually, Reinhardt resigns himself to the futility of his escape attempts, realizing that Gerard is relentless and doesn't understand the concept of giving up. Gerard informs him that Jim Unbreakable boasts 130 years of disciple escape prevention methods. He mentions that in their history, there have been no disciples who haven't feigned illness or attempted to escape. Even if Reinhardt managed to escape, Gerard asserts that he would relentlessly search to the ends of the continent to track him down. He suggests that it would be better for Reinhardt to officially obtain permission and descend the mountain. Despite the harsh training, Reinhardt endures continued beatings from his teacher Gerard. After 2 years of perseverance, he finally achieves his goal and succeeds in the awakening his aura. Reinhardt feels elated with his newfound abilities. He recalls hearing that even Cyrus, praised as the sword saying, only awakened his aura in his late 20s. Therefore, he's surprised that he easily attained this stage despite not yet being 20. Gerard, however, finds Reinhardt's astonishment unwarranted. He explains that with the training of Jim Unbreakable, such progress is expected. According to Gerard, if someone stimulates the survival instinct alongside physical training, the will to live increases, thereby enhancing vitality and manifesting aura. While holding his mace, Gerard remarks that it doesn't even harm Teslan anymore. He then tosses it aside and declares that they should move on to the next step. Reinhardt then asks if they will now learn some normal martial arts, hoping to descend the mountain soon. Unfortunately, Gerard declares that the next step is sparring training with him. Reinhardt feels puzzled and scared, knowing that his strength isn't comparable to Gerard's. The sparring between Reinhardt and Gerard continues for 3 years. One day, Reinhardt travels to the Vasily Kingdom in the southern region, specifically to the Larchid Mountains, a rugged and challenging terrain. There, in the middle of a waterfall, Reinhardt undertakes additional training. Possessing his awakened aura, he prepares to attack using his calamity horn technique. This time, his aura is much stronger than was 3 years ago, and his body has become bolder and more resilient. Composing himself, Reinhardt channels all of his strength into his fist. With a powerful charge, he punches the mountain with immense force. As he executes the move, he wonders if his third superposition is his limit and thinks he just needs to push a bit more for it to work. He reflects that the calamity horn is a powerful blow that can be executed by channeling all the strength into one spot on a body, and the sight of someone concentrating their aura resembles a horn, hence it got the nickname Calamity Horn. He realizes that he needs to somehow polish it to the 4th superposition. The final stage of the Calamity Horn, the 9th superposition, is said to produce a punch that sends 9 ripples capable of killing gods. Reinhardt reflects on the fact that the Teslan he knew had a limit of 7 superpositions, and even his master Gerard could only perform up to the 8th superposition. Gerard has told him that he needed to at least reach the 4th superposition to descend the mountain. Reinhardt thinks that Gerard has gone down to the village for the first time in a while and assumes Gerard will take this time to have a drink before returning. He looks at his hand, remembering how he would have seized this opportunity to run away in the past, but now he has changed. Deciding to end his stamina training here, he suddenly summons some magic power and calls forth Delphurla Stellan, wishing it to become a bullet made from air to hit his enemy. He attacks the tree in front of him with his power, which he calls Hero Bullet. However, the tree only gains a scratch from his attack. He feels disappointed, thinking that his body isn't supporting him. Although he vividly remembers all of his magical knowledge through his artificial flashback, his mana isn't building and Teslan's stone body lacks arithmetic ability, leaving him uncertain if he can still become a mage. Suddenly, he feels an energy that he believes doesn't belong to a human. He stares at the area where the energy emanates from and sees a beast emerge. It is an orc holding a sword. Reinhardt feels no fear since beasts were his friends in his past life. The orc speaks, telling him to pretend he didn't see him, promising not to kill him if he complies. Judging from the orc's size, Reinhardt believes that this orc is probably 3 or 4 years older. He also notices that the orc seems like a runaway, possibly having escaped from somewhere like the arena. Reinhardt smiles slightly, recognizing that the orc is attempting to resolve this situation peacefully, as they are not being hostile. He acknowledges the orc's prideful race, which avoids unnecessary killing even in such situations. He asks the young orc if someone is chasing him. The orc is surprised at that and asks Reinhardt that how does a human like him knows the language of grace. Proudly, Reinhardt reveals that he had a fateful encounter. Orc reaffirms that it was a blessed one indeed. The orc then admits to Reinhardt that he is being chased. In response, Reinhardt offers to help him and asks if he would trust him. The orc reveals that Reinhardt feels like a brother to him because of his knowledge of the language of grace, and he senses Reinhardt's genuine kindness in his soul. However, he hesitates to accept Reinhardt's offer because he believes that helping him an orc would only endanger Reinhardt. Reinhardt is pleased to encounter an eloquent speaker orc, which leads him to believe that the orc comes from a good bloodline. He urges the orc to trust him, expressing confidence in his current abilities. Reinhardt then activates a magic spell and assures the orc that it will conceal him. The orc is shocked and asks Reinhardt if he is a mage. Reinhardt, taken aback, questions the orc if it's strange for him to be a mage. The orc confirms, citing Reinhardt's stone body as the reason. Reinhardt is too stunned to speak, but fortunately, the orc gratefully accepts his kindness and disappears after Reinhardt conceals the magic he activated. Alone again, Reinhardt hears irritable voices of humans nearby. Realizing they are not alone in a group of hunters, he listens as the man in the middle angrily complains about coming all the way there just to earn a few silver coins. This man appears to be the leader of the hunters, and he asks Reinhardt if he saw a young orc pass by. Another man chimes in, stating they are willing to offer gold coins if Reinhardt will disclose the orc's whereabouts. The leader then whispered to his companion, suggesting that the gold coins were too much. However, the companion insists it was just a ruse. The men then turn their attention back to Reinhardt. When questioned, Reinhardt denies seeing any orcs in the area. Unfortunately, the hunters notice the orc's footsteps, prompting them to climb up and prepare to follow. Reinhardt is annoyed that his magic spell didn't erase the orc's footprints. With crossed arms, he informs the humans that they can't simply enter since this area is his dwelling. The leader of the hunters angrily retorts, accusing Reinhardt of blocking their way and boasting that they are a total of 10 strong knights and he is no match for them. They continue to babble on, but Reinhardt remains fierce and keeps his arms crossed. He refuses to give way and instead activates another magic. Recalling his master Gerard's teachings, he remembers that his fist is a deadly weapon, and that he must show appropriate mercy to the weak. With this magic, he summons a weapon as Gerard instructed him. Being much stronger with bare fists than with weapons, wielding a weapon itself is considered mercy. Pointing his weapon at the humans, Reinhardt assures them not to worry as they won't die after receiving a beating with this weapon. He explains that while the Jim Unbreakable clan primarily focuses on unearned martial arts, it doesn't mean there's no weapon training at all. The men show no fear of Reinhardt. Gritting his teeth, Reinhardt hits the men one by one with his weapon. The remaining men charge at him with swords, but he manages to strike them while remaining unharmed. However, the primary purpose of the club arts, the only weapon technique, is not for combat, but rather to rigorously train disciples. It specializes in striking all over the opponent's body, with no defensive moves, only offense. As Reinhardt fights them, he believes that these mercenaries make a living using their swords. Someone hits his back with a sword, but he remains unaffected. The sword itself even becomes crippled, shocking the mercenary who owned it. As Reinhardt strikes him, he is simultaneously shocked that the sword has no effect on him. While he knows this is now his own body, it's still a bit overwhelming for him. He reflects that in addition to the club art technique, its best aspect is its non-lethal nature, as it is designed not to kill opponents, but rather to beat and punish them for challenging him. Knowing this weapon wouldn't kill the men, Reinhardt repeatedly beats them and reassures them that they won't die from it, even if their joints break and their bones are smashed. None of the men fight back despite receiving more beatings. In the end, they tremble in pain and hope someone will come to their rescue. The leader of the mercenaries points his sword at Reinhardt and demands that he state his name. Reinhardt responds defiantly and strikes the man with his club, asserting that it wouldn't be fair if he remained unscathed while his friends suffered. The men, now getting up, decide to leave. Although Reinhardt's weapon is already broken, he finds enjoyment in beating the mercenaries. This experience leads him to contemplate taking on disciples and giving them a similar beating in the future, unknowingly being influenced by the philosophy of Jim Unbreakable. After the mercenaries leave, the orc emerges and expresses gratitude to Reinhardt for his kindness and assistance, despite not being a human savior. He vows to never forget this day and promises to repay Reinhardt's kindness for as long as he lives. Politely, the orc bows his head in gratitude. Surprised by the orc's humility, Reinhardt questions if it's appropriate for a warrior to bow his head so easily. In response, the orc explains that Reinhardt saved his life and paved a new path for him. He declares Reinhardt as his mentor and expresses willingness to wield his sword for him when needed. In orc culture, a mentor is revered and considered a guide in life, similar to how a knight serves their lord in human society. The orc asks for Reinhardt's name, and Reinhardt is on the verge of answering Teslan, but he decides it's best to reveal his true identity. He declares that his name is Reinhardt Walled Antares. The orc promises to always remember his name. Curious about the orc's destination, Reinhardt asks what's on his mind. The orc responds that the continent is vast, so he believes there must be some place for him to find rest. If not, he would rather die wandering than live as a slave. Reinhardt informs the orc that beyond the Larchig Mountains, a fortnight's walk to the southeast, lies a nameless wasteland, known as the Land of Trials by the Orcish kind. It's a place the orc must go to. Reinhardt also mentions hearing about the orcs who live in hiding there, particularly the Blue Bear tribe. The orc immediately runs off towards the mentioned place. While the orc is running, Reinhardt asks for his name. The orc reveals that he is the son of Crota, Herdalat's axe, and his name is Tathid. As expected, Reinhardt is shocked to learn that Tathid is the brave orc warrior from his past life, one of his 4 heavenly kings. He reflects that Tathid was the chief of the Blue Bear tribe and later became the grand chieftain of the orcs. In this moment, Reinhardt wonders if the original Teslan met Tathid in his previous life as well. However, considering Teslan's personality, he believes Teslan wouldn't have helped an orc. He utters that it seems like fate has taken a turn. He stares down at Tathid, pondering the fascinating twist of fate that brought them together. A smile plays on his lips as he reminisces about his empire, his people, and his past appearance. He harbors hope that someday they will all reunite. To him, these beasts are his true friends and family, descendants of the brave warrior. Another half-year passes since the strange encounter with Tathid. Throughout this time, Gerard continues to train Reinhardt, teaching him the key bullet technique. The flames of the technique intimidate Reinhardt, but he manages to activate his spiral guard in time, successfully blocking the attack. Gerard expresses pride in Reinhardt for reacting appropriately. He remarks nostalgically that Reinhardt's spiral guard has ascended to a summit. Gerard then tells Reinhardt that he remembers it like yesterday when he insisted that Teslan is Reinhardt after enduring numerous beatings. Reinhardt is annoyed by Gerard's mention of events from 6 years ago and questions why he needs to bring it up. Gerard tells him that it has been 6 years since he started teaching him and he can now see that he has grown considerably stronger since then. However, he cannot explain why he is still so small. Reinhardt responds defiantly to Gerard's remark about his size, stating that he is over 190 centimeters tall. However, Gerard angrily retorts that a member of the gym Unbreakable should be over 2 meters tall, like the martial kings Valkenchut, Calbrain, and Rastal. He grabs Reinhardt's head and demands to know if he has been consistently following the breathing technique he taught him. Reinhardt recalls that the Teslan he encountered before was indeed around 2.3 meters tall. He explains to Gerard that he believes his current stature is a matter of constitution. He reflects that he has no desire to grow any taller. He fears that if he were to use the breathing technique now, his body would become monstrous, which he wishes to avoid. Fortunately, what matters most to Gerard is that Teslan proves to be sturdy enough. He then orders Reinhardt to demonstrate the final result of his training. Reinhardt activates his aura, his eyes sparkling with determination, and surprises Gerard by leaping to great heights. He channels his calamity horn technique, preparing to strike. As he descends, he delivers a powerful punch to the ground using his 4th superposition calamity horn, shattering the earth and causing water to splash forcefully from below. Gerard is impressed, chuckling at his student's excellence. Observing Reinhardt's current strength, Gerard believes that his student could withstand a significant beating from someone. Reinhardt is left speechless, realizing that after a year of training, he has finally achieved the 4th superposition calamity horn. Gerard signals that it seems it is almost time for Reinhardt to head out to the outside world. Confusion clouded Reinhardt's mind at his mentor's unexpected announcement. Gerard continues, praising Reinhardt's progress and granting him the freedom to choose his own destiny, whether it be virtuous or malevolent. He tells him to live the life he wants as it is the price of training he has endured till now. This revelation left Reinhardt stunned, realizing the weight of the journey he had undergone under Gerard's tutelage. In response, he could only utter his master's name, speechless in the face of such profound freedom. Gerard recalls a lesson imparted by the 3rd martial king, Master Rastal, 6 decades ago. In a flashback, Rastal emphasizes the importance of accumulating wealth but cautions against acquiring it unjustly. This advice puzzles Gerard as Rastal had previously endorsed the idea of embracing villainy. However, Rastal clarifies that he advocates for being a dignified villain, one who possesses a distinct style. Additionally, Rastal encourages Gerard to stand alongside the unjustly treated whenever possible, highlighting the value of living a life praised and respected. He emphasizes that being weak does not equate to being unjustly treated, as the world is replete with individuals weaker than oneself, leaving it to each person to discern who truly merits support. Rastal tells Gerard that the 3rd directive, and the most important one, is to ensure the continuation of the martial legacy of the gym Unbreakable at any cost. In the present, Gerard imparts this principle to Reinhardt as well, stressing the importance of finding a worthy disciple to carry on their esteemed teachings. Reinhardt solemnly accepts this responsibility, pledging to hold it close to his heart. Aware of the challenge ahead, Gerard advises him to remain vigilant and patient, as finding such a talented individual might take a lifetime. However, when the opportunity arises, Reinhardt must seize it without hesitation. As a token of support, Gerard tosses a pouch containing Reinhardt's clothes and travel expenses. Upon inspection, Reinhardt finds 30 silver coins inside. This amount disappoints Reinhardt, as he had expected more from Gerard, considering his purported wealth in the Vasily Kingdom and the mention of a mansion in the capital. Though the sum provided is equivalent to half a year's living expenses for a commoner, Reinhardt finds it insufficient. Gerard explains that their martial clan has a standard payment for those descending the mountain, which has been adjusted to account for inflation over time. In Gerard's era, this payment was around 25 silvers. Additionally, Gerard hands Reinhardt a map and informs him that he can find a small gift personally left by Gerard at the Settled Mountains. Reinhardt is free to visit the location whenever he is nearby. Reinhardt consults the map, then readies himself to depart. Just before he sets off, he casts a lingering glance back at Gerard, questioning the wisdom of descending the mountain. Doubts assail him. Is he truly free? Suddenly, a formidable fire technique materializes from Gerard, startling him. Fear grips him as he utters, "Mamma mia." Gerard tells him to go and don't mourn over partings and run with the iron resolve without looking back. He reminds Reinhardt that he is the inheritor of Earth's greatest teachings. Reinhardt bolts away from Gerard, his screams of fear echoing through his mind. He dreads the thought of facing his master's wrath once more, envisioning days of punishment. Several days later, in the faraway village, the village chief approaches the inn where the noble knight is reciting. Despite the warnings of his subordinate, who knows the danger involved, a determined old man proceeds, intent on delivering his message as he steps inside. The noble knight inquires about the matter, prompting the village chief to request payment for the food consumed by him and the other knights. Irritated, the knight flicks a single gold coin toward the village chief, believing it to be sufficient. The chief catches the coin and scrutinizes it momentarily, leading the knight to assume the old man is unfamiliar with such wealth. However, to his surprise, the chief boldly asserts that the single gold coin is an adequate compensation for all they've consumed. Enraged, the noble knight believes the old man doubts his knowledge of market prices because of his noble status. He shouts at the old man for daring to mock a knight and delivers a blow to the helpless man. The village chief glares at the noble knight, seething with anger. He despises how this knight, much like a bandit, has commandeered their homes and stockpiled their food, all for a paltry ducat, without any regard for the transportation and labor expenses borne by the villagers. Meanwhile, a young man in shining armor interrupts, addressing the noble knight as Sir Edward and inquiring about the matter. Edward recognizes the young man as the young Lord Stephen and dismisses the concern, considering it insignificant. Observing the scene, Lord Stephen mutters to himself about the situation, declaring the villagers as truly despicable. He emphasizes the importance of not showing mercy to peasants, as it risks them forgetting their place in society. Meanwhile, Reinhardt recalls his time with a lady elf named Cyrus. He reminisces how Cyrus admired his lean physique, likening it to a well-crafted blade, perfect in her eyes. Reinhardt reflects that this is how he once looked like, but now his current resemblance to an ultimate stone golem weapon. However, he finds solace in the fact that he appears taller now than he did in the past. Standing by the window, he reflects that Cyrus of this era would likely be around 70, roughly equivalent to 17 in human years. Currently situated in Crom, a city in the south of the Vasily Kingdom, he recalls that Cyrus is slated for sale next year, expected to be part of Chadden's slave auction. Contemplating his options, he ponders what course of action to take. He entertains the idea of sabotaging the auction site and liberating the lady. However, he hesitates, fearing that such a reckless act would hinder his chances of regaining his magical powers. Instead, he opts for a more pragmatic approach and resolves to resolve this situation with money. Recognizing that the price of elf slaves is astronomical, he acknowledges his current financial constraints but remains undeterred. Content with possessing a powerful body technique and memories of the future, he recalls hearing about an ancient ruin on the route to Chadden. Meanwhile, Stephen visits his mage and inquires if he's still not figured out the location to the ancient ruins. The mage, named Todd, who operates from Delphia's Mage Tower and is renowned for his expertise in archaeology, informs Stephen that he's still in the process of searching for the ruins and advises him to be patient. After a few more minutes of searching, Todd finally pinpoints the direction of the ancient ruins, situated within a mountain where the renowned swordsman Sir Claude von Leoder's Alshin is buried. 3 days have passed since Reinhardt departed from Crom. He now travels northward towards the Hatton Mountains on the Central Road. Despite hearing tales of former martial kings braving winter toplessness, he has no intention of emulating them. Reflecting on his abilities, he recalls the artificial flashback technique, a secret of the ages that enables him to revive memories at will. Using this, he delves into his recollections of the ancient ruins in the Hatton Mountains. Prior to his regression, he recalls encountering a mage named Todd at Delphi's Mage Tower, who had explored those very ruins with the Alshans. Reinhardt remembers vividly that he had ventured to the ancient ruins in his past life as well. During that excursion, he succeeded in discovering the genuine treasures that Todd's party missed. He sold all the treasures found in the ruins and amassed over 2,000 gold coins, a considerable profit. Later, after a lengthy journey, he finally arrives at Cattle Village. Within one of its buildings, villagers convene to discuss their predicament. Aware of the forbidden nature of the Valley of Death, they contemplate the demand from the nobles for a guide. An old man among them cautions against defiance, citing potential danger should they refuse. Though some express anger towards the nobles, the old man urges them to lower their voices to avoid detection. A young man named Ted steps forward, volunteering to guide the nobles. He confidently declares his familiarity with the mountains, asserting himself as the most qualified candidate in the village. Despite his outward bravado, his wife weeps with worry and even his daughter harbors concerns. Deep down, Ted himself harbors reluctance, but his desire to protect his village from the nobles outweighs his personal fears. Encouraged by the other men's cheers, he prepares to depart. Suddenly, Reinhardt, with his face pressed against the window, interjects, offering to go in Ted's place. Startled, Ted swiftly aims his arrow at Reinhardt, taken aback by the unexpected offer. Reinhardt quickly reassures Ted that he's merely a passerby who happened to overhear their discussion. Allowed entry by the villagers, he confidently affirms his knowledge of the way to the Valley of Death, mentioning his prior visits. Despite a warning from one villager that no one has ever returned alive from the Valley of Death, Reinhardt remains resolute in his determination to go. He senses the gratitude the villagers would have for him if he could save their lives. It is revealed that the Valley of Death, also known as the Dungeon, is a remnant of the Silver Age, a forgotten era of history. 50 years ago, there was a knight from the Alshans named Claude. Despite being only 45 years old, he managed to awaken aura, embarking on numerous adventures that spread his heroic tales throughout the Vasily Kingdom. However, fame bred arrogance, and Claude, accompanied by only one servant, ventured into the Valley of Death. Tragically, he perished there. Compounding the tragedy was the loss of the demonic sword Alshans, a symbol of the Alshans family passed down through generations. Efforts to recover the sword persisted for over 50 years. Right now, Reinhardt accompanies the nobles, including Stephen von Rapanto Alshan. As they travel, Reinhardt's thoughts linger on Stephen, considering his status as the grandson of Claude. Reinhardt notices an elf named Lelcia accompanying Stephen. Meanwhile, Lelcia tells Stephen that he looks graceful even without a horse. Stephen visibly brightens at her words, his gaze fixed on the elf. Instantly, Reinhardt surmises that the lady is a slayer elf, and you could say that both were having fun together. He also observes that there is only one saint in the party whom he identifies as Scylan. Reinhardt wonders if Scylan, despite his youthful guise, is capable of using proper divine spells. Though Scylan appears feminine, Reinhardt notes that he is, in fact, male. Besides, Todd is also present, and Reinhardt feels a sense of nostalgia upon seeing him again after so long. However, he hesitates to approach Todd as both Todd and Scylan are engrossed in conversation. Reinhardt recalls his lively discussions with Todd during their younger days. However, he can now sense a different atmosphere between Todd and Scylan. He comes to the startling conclusion that Todd may have feelings for Scylan, which surprises him, leading him to wonder if Todd might be gay. As Reinhardt's thoughts drift, Stephen's commander, Edward, engages him in conversation, commending his decision to guide them. Reinhardt realizes that Edward is referring to him, but he brushes off the praise as insignificant. Edward elaborates, mentioning that the villagers were too frightened to take on the task themselves. Reinhardt acknowledges the villagers' fear as understandable. Edward interjects, questioning what could possibly instill such terror when accompanied by the kingdom's brave knights. Edward's arrogance grates on Reinhardt's nerves, leading him to feel annoyed. Reinhardt reflects on his belief that every knight in the world is filled with arrogance, and that the code of chivalry often breeds narcissism among men. While they continue on their way, a sudden loud scream breaks the silence, leaving everyone confused. A strange creature emerges, heading straight for them. It's a monster. There is a bunch of monsters behind him, who transform and charge at the humans. Stephen quickly declares it an ambush and commands everyone to get into formation. The monsters are hairy, with flaming eyes and sharp bird-like nails. Enraged, Stephen denounces the monsters, calling them disgusting for daring to attack humans blessed by Slayer. Simultaneously, he orders his men to launch an attack. Todd then attacks the monsters using his fire chain, eliminating several of them. Scylla chants a plea to Philinins, invoking fortitude and bravery for the group as they battle the monsters. Reinhardt watches in shock, noting that everyone, especially Stephen, is quite skilled in combat. However, from his perspective as a martial artist, he finds their abilities rather pitiful compared to his own standards. Reinhardt then recalls his master, Gerard, reflecting that his master's pride is well earned. Among the group, there are also orcs serving as porters. When one monster charges at an orc, Reinhardt intervenes and kills the wild creature with a single punch, shattering it into pieces. Relieved that no one witnessed his technique, he ponders Todd's adventure story, concluding that if it were true, that guide Ted would likely have perished in this place. The captain of this expedition, Stephen from the Alshans family, strikes Reinhardt as indifferent to his surroundings. While Reinhardt can't definitively label Stephen as a bad person, he perceives Stephen lacks concern for his environment and those around him. He concludes that this indeed makes him a bad person. Noticing Reinhardt standing still, Scylla instructs him to take cover behind a tree, recognizing the danger. This act leads Reinhardt to conclude that Scylla is somewhat more considerate than Stephen. Out of nowhere, a monster attacks Reinhardt with its feather technique. Initially, Reinhardt feels no pain and remains confident that these creatures pose no real threat to him. However, when struck in the eyes, he screams in pain. In a swift reaction, he punches the monster that dared to attack him, wondering that there were still tears left in him that he didn't cry during training. After the group successfully defeats all the monsters, Reinhardt reassesses the situation, still feeling the sting of the unexpected injury. Edward reports to Stephen that the mages and priests are safe. Reinhardt feels disappointed that no one checked on the ordinary travelers. Stephen proclaims the strength of the Alshans' knighthood and then grants everyone permission to rest, urging them to enjoy their victory. Taking advantage of the break, Reinhardt approaches Todd and expresses his gratitude, stating that he survived thanks to Todd's help. Todd modestly replies that it was no big deal. Knowing Todd is from Delphia's Mage Tower, Reinhardt mentions having a friend there and lies about his friend's name being Reinhardt, asking Todd if he knows him. Todd recognizes the name and is surprised that young Reinhardt would have a rough friend. He remarks that Reinhardt is quite cute and kind. Reinhardt feels uncomfortable hearing Todd's praise, finding it strange to see his own face described as disgusting. When Todd asks why he inquired about Reinhardt, the real Reinhardt improvises, claiming he was simply curious about his friend's well-being and recent activities. Todd tells him that Reinhardt is spending his days well learning magic. Reinhardt inquires if anything unusual has occurred in recent years, but Todd replies in the negative. Instead, he comments on Reinhardt's physical features, noting his high nose bridge, jewel-like eyes, and smooth skin. Todd only caring about young Reinhardt's body annoys Reinhardt, who perceives Todd as disgusting. He is further irked to see Todd practically drooling while making these observations. He ponders if he should beat Todd to death. Somehow maintaining his composure, Reinhardt asks if there have been any changes in Reinhardt's attitude. Todd admits uncertainty, as he hasn't paid much attention to the child's thoughts or actions. Stillin suddenly approaches Reinhardt, expressing concern about his well-being. Reinhardt assures him that he's fine and instructs Scylla to check on the orcs. Scylla complies, examining the orcs to ensure their well-being despite their claims of being unharmed. Some knights approach Scylla, dismissing the orcs' injuries, claiming they'll recover simply by licking themselves. Despite this, Scylla chooses to ignore their remarks, much to Reinhardt's satisfaction. Nevertheless, while Scylla is kind and tends to the orcs' injuries, Reinhardt notices that his demeanor towards them resembles that of caring for a pet rather than fellow beings. Reflecting on this, Reinhardt contemplates the fundamental values of society, recognizing the challenges faced by certain species in attaining their rights. He believes that the path towards securing rights for these species is arduous and fraught with obstacles. After a brief respite, Stephen summons Reinhardt, ordering him to lead the way immediately. Reinhardt acknowledges the command and advises Stephen to decelerate as they approach a stream after turning right. Stephen is annoyed by Reinhardt's eerie voice. Hours later, the knights appear exhausted, having battled a basilisk, a dire wolf, and over 20 ogres. They are perplexed by the sudden influx of monsters in the small mountain area. Unbeknownst to them, Reinhardt intentionally avoided the existing path, opting to push forward recklessly. Concerned for their well-being, Reinhardt offers a rest, but receives no response. Instead, Stephen orders everyone to get up, his frustration evident in his shouting. Reinhardt holds disdain for the knight's arrogance, finds the clerics overly serious, and perceives mages as narrow-minded and cheap. Identifying himself as a mage to the bone, he reflects that he deliberately take them on the fastest route, and it is not like he lied. He thinks to himself that he definitely didn't do it to bother them. Upon reaching the place where Sir Claude met his demise, Stephen expresses disbelief at the abundance of monsters in such a small mountain. Seeing the ancient ruins, he and Edward share a wide smile. They head directly to the ancient ruins of Palton. With Reinhardt and 4 others standing outside the entrance while the knight remains below them, Todd gestures towards the entrance, expressing his belief that it's safe to enter. Stephen then orders everyone to prepare. Reinhardt suggests he'll wait outside, but Stephen dismisses him, stating his job is done and he can return home. However, Reinhardt explains he has no means to get back to the village alone. Recognizing his efforts, Stephen decides to protect him on the journey back. As they prepare to enter, Stephen reveals that a great being is asleep inside and suggests they respect its wishes as they search for the demonic sword of Alshan. As the knights cheered and entered the ruins, Reinhardt waved them off and wished them luck. He remained outside alone, smiling to himself. He acknowledged that it was time for him to begin his work. He had reflected on the nature of the ancient ruins of Palton, recognizing that it was now inhabited by monsters and spirits. However, in the Silver Age, it functioned as a logistics base and a standard military building. Despite its ordinary appearance, the technology from that era was considered miraculous by today's standards, making the ruins incredibly valuable. Entering the secret entrance, Reinhardt reminisces about his previous exploration of the place with Cirrus. They had been ecstatic when Cyrus discovered the subtle whispers in the wall, which she believed to be a secret passage. Together, they managed to unlock it, and that day, Cyrus kissed him. Recalling their adventures in the midst of danger fills Reinhardt with excitement and longing. As he arrives at the second secret passage, Reinhardt recalls the password, a mixture of Libra's left as a base, mixed with Aqua and Terra's seal in reverse. Fortunately, he essentially has the answer sheet at his disposal. However, executing it isn't as simple as he had anticipated due to his insufficient mana. He begrudgingly blames Teslan's body for his current predicament. Fortunately, the secret path opened for Reinhardt. As he prepared to enter, he hesitated to discard his clothes considering the cost of 10 silver coins. Stretching his body to gauge his physical abilities, he suddenly heard a scream emanating from the right side. Confused, he recalled guiding the humans towards the left side. Realizing that the secret path is a back door leading to the 3rd floor of the basement, he understands that entering through it constitutes trespassing. Upon considering the trespassing situation, Reinhardt flinches as he recalls more knowledge from his past life. He remembers that this place was once a military building equipped with various security features designed to repel trespassers. In the past, when he and Cyrus explored the dungeon alone, they didn't need to worry about encountering others. However, with the Alshan's group now in the basement, it's evident that they've fallen into a trap. This realization makes Reinhardt nervous as he fears they're now in serious trouble. Meanwhile, the knights who fell to the 2nd floor encounter the resident monsters. Stephen stays behind and witnesses the gruesome demise of his companions. He observes the monstrous creatures up close, noting their formidable weapons, terrifying faces, and massive bodies. With several monsters present, Stephen begins to doubt whether humans can defeat them. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the dungeon, Scylla tends to the wounded knights. Unbeknownst to them, Scylla's actions are driven by self-preservation rather than genuine concern for their well-being. Approaching Todd, Scylla recounts the harrowing experience of the sudden floor collapse, which nearly cost him his life. He expresses heartfelt gratitude towards Todd, acknowledging that he was spared thanks to Todd's protective magic. Todd expresses uncertainty about their ability to survive in the future, despite avoiding an immediate disaster. As they press on with their exploration, a sudden attack by a formidable monster from the upper floor catches them off guard. Chaos erupts as the monster descends upon their level, wreaking havoc and injuring the knights, sending them fleeing in fear. In response, Scylla utilizes his abilities, invoking Filaments to unleash a mace of light upon the corrupt being. The radiant weapon hovers above him. He continues to pray to instill wavering courage in everyone to fight. Despite his disappointment at the knights' inclination to flee, Scylla continues to bestow blessings upon them. The knights, empowered by Scylla's divine intervention, grip their swords and enter a berserker-like state, charging at the monsters. Todd is astonished by the display of divine power, wondering about the extent of Scylla's abilities to incite such a transformation. The knights, now seemingly intoxicated with courage and blessings, engage in fierce combat with the monsters. Todd, while casting his magic, also joins the fray with his iron steel. Lusha bravely fights as well, landing blows on some monsters. However, suddenly she sustains a stab wound and drops her weapon, falling to the ground in agony. Stephen praises Lusha for her efforts before charging at the monsters himself. Bravely slashing a monster, Stephen swiftly dispatches it, much to the relief of Edward and the other knights. Despite his fall on the 2nd floor, Stephen remains resolute, urging everyone to gather their courage. As they press forward, Stephen recalls the defeat of Sir Claude, the renowned knight, in this very place. Suddenly, a powerful burst of flame erupts above them, followed by a terrifying explosion. A monstrous creature, engulfed in flames and towering in size, emerges before them. This fiery beast unleashes torrents of fire, striking down numerous knights. Though Stefan instructs them not to falter, the intensity of the flames instills fear in everyone, prompting them to attempt to flee from the terrifying monster. Even Stefan, feeling the intense heat of the monster's flames, grits his teeth in annoyance, determined not to meet his end so easily. Gripping his weapon tightly, he charges at the monster, leaping forward with confidence. Asserting his identity as the one who upholds the name of Alshan, the title of Resolute, he launches his attack with the shooting stroke technique. However, his bold advance is met with a fierce counterattack from the flaming monster, delivering a devastating blow to Stefan's face that causes him to cough up blood. Reeling from the impact, he loses his grip on his sword and staggers backward, ultimately losing consciousness. Scylla, witnessing Stefan's unconscious state, grows nervous but remains steadfast in his use of magic, channeling his powers in an attempt to destroy the corrupt beings with his light. Scylla, rattled by fear, attempts to fend off the flaming monster with his mace of light, only to find it ineffective against the creature's fiery form. Trembling in terror as the monster charges towards him, Scylla braces himself for the impending impact. However, before the monster can strike, it is suddenly repelled and sent flying away. Opening his eyes in disbelief, Scylla sees Reinhardt standing protectively in front of him. Covered in his powerful aura, the Jigachad's only strike has caused the flames of the monster to extinguish, leaving them safe from harm. As Reinhardt observes the monster crumble from just one hit, he gains insight into his own near-death experience at the hands of Teslan. Realizing the magnitude of his own power, he looks around and sees most of the knights lying unconscious. Determined to protect them, he resolves to move them to safety. Despite more monsters closing in on them, Reinhardt remains undeterred. Carrying Letitia, he effortlessly dispatches each monster bare-handed as he ascends to the upper floor. Witnessing his astonishing strength leaves the remaining knights, Todd and Scylla, dumbfounded and in awe. Upon regaining consciousness and surveying his surroundings, Stefan is shocked to find the corpses of monsters scattered around. Seeking clarification from Edward, he learns of Reinhardt's prowess as a martial artist. Surprised by this revelation, Stefan approaches Reinhardt and admits his failure to recognize someone of such skill. Curious about Reinhardt's identity, Stefan inquires about his name. Thinking that Todd is already aware of a Reinhardt studying in the Mage Tower, Reinhardt decides to disclose only part of his name to Stefan. He informs Stefan that he goes by the name Riffin. Meanwhile, Edward contemplates the name Riffin, finding it unfamiliar and causing doubts to arise about Riffin's strength. He questions why he hasn't heard of Riffin before if he truly possesses the formidable abilities that have been claimed. Stefan, curious about Reinhardt's background, inquiries about his family. To his surprise, Reinhardt reveals that he has no family background to speak of. Stefan is shocked by this revelation as he had assumed Reinhardt to be a noble's child traveling for experience, and to discover that he is just an ordinary person without any notable lineage is somewhat undigestible to him. Expressing his sentiments, Stefan comments on their shared accomplishments, deeming Reinhardt's assistance as decent. However, when Stefan attempts to show appreciation by tapping Reinhardt's shoulder, Reinhardt pushes his hand away, questioning Stefan that how his mind worked for him to remember the situation like that. He asserts that, let us be real, it was Stefan himself who was not of any help. Stefan's anger flares as he insists that Reinhardt must show respect to the Alshan's family. Edward intervenes, urging Stefan to calm down and reminding him that someone from a humble background may not be well versed in etiquette. Stefan reluctantly agrees, acknowledging Reinhardt's lack of proper upbringing. Curious about Reinhardt's training, Stefan questions who taught him. Reinhardt responds with irritation, explaining that he acquired his abilities through various means. He's wary of divulging his master's name, particularly due to the reputation of his master Gerard and the desire to keep his whereabouts private. Despite Stefan's disbelief, Reinhardt remains adamant about maintaining his privacy. He advises Stefan to focus on caring for the injured instead of prying into his personal affairs. Reinhardt's casual and natural demeanor catches Edward's attention. He notices Reinhardt's manner of speaking, which seems to Edward to be filled with hubris. This type of demeanor is characteristic of those in positions of authority, speaking down to their subordinates without considering their age or status. Edward begins to speculate about the origins of Reinhardt's arrogance. He considers the possibility that Reinhardt could be of royal descent from another country. Edward sees through Reinhardt's speech patterns, interpreting them as akin to an older individual speaking condescendingly to someone younger. This observation leads Edward to view Reinhardt as an enigmatic and unusual individual. Scylla approaches Reinhardt from behind and inquires about his height. Reinhardt responds that he must be around 192 centimeters tall. Scylla's eyes light up with curiosity and he proceeds to ask about Reinhardt's weight. However, Reinhardt admits that he's unsure, as he hasn't weighed himself. Scylla, intrigued by Reinhardt's physique, asks about his training regimen. Reinhardt casually explains that he engaged in a combination of eating, lifting, and hitting exercises. Reinhardt is puzzled by Scylla's abrupt friendliness and wonders about his sudden interest. It is revealed that Scylla has lost his parents early and was raised in an orphanage. Throughout his upbringing, he endured frequent bullying due to his frail and delicate appearance. He yearned for a healthier physique and a deeper voice, perhaps because of his experiences. At one point, he even aspired to become a monk, believing devoutness could be expressed through physical strength. However, reality fell short of his expectations, and despite his efforts, his height remained unchanged, puberty never arrived, and his hair grew rapidly despite his frail physique. His attempts at weight training yielded little physical improvement, but inadvertently enhanced his divine power as he treated his injuries from the training. This led him to admire those with muscular physiques, much like the situation he found himself in presently. Meanwhile, Reinhardt feels overwhelmed by Scylla's gaze and decides to make a hasty exit, citing the need to scout the exit. However, Scylla intervenes and offers his assistance. Reinhardt counters by inquiring about the fate of those injured individuals in Scylla's absence. Scylla's mood shifts as he realizes the truth in Reinhardt's words. Stephen overhears them, so he offers to accompany Reinhardt. He then commands Letitia to stay and help. He approaches Reinhardt and asks if it's all right for him to join. Reinhardt, in turn, tells him to do as he pleases. They both head to the entrance. At this moment, even if it's just a coincidence, Stephen can't help but acknowledge Reinhardt. Considering they received help from him, Stephen concludes that Reinhardt is feeling proud of himself for being able to assert authority over a knight. Just the fact that Reinhardt is taking the lead to do whatever he wants is evidence for Stephen that Reinhardt is looking down on the knights. Stephen eagerly looks forward to witnessing how Reinhardt handles the situation as a demon suddenly appears. He anticipates to demonstrate Reinhardt his skills and put him in his place. Stephen's desire for a demon to emerge is cut short when Reinhardt unexpectedly hits the back of his head. Reinhardt directs Stephen to rest, swiftly rendering him unconscious. Stephen collapses to the floor, and a few low-level the monsters roar into existence. Unperturbed, Reinhardt effortlessly dispatches each monster bare-handed, eliminating them one by one. With the obstacles cleared, Reinhardt confidently strides towards the location of the treasure. Entering the room, Reinhardt begins his search. After a short time, luck favors him as he discovers the Limitless Bag, a magical tool enabling the storage of items up to 10 times the size of the bag while reducing their weight to a tenth. Delving into gathering items, he recalls there should be other valuable items aside from the bag: the heavenly brazier, the returning dagger, a magical sapphire, and numerous other expensive articles. After collecting the whole treasure, Reinhardt returns to Stephen to check on him. Stephen regains consciousness and inquires about the situation. Reinhardt fabricates a story claiming Stephen was struck from behind by a monster, instantly rendering him unconscious. Stephen's annoyance grows as he perceives his plans as unsuccessful, leaving him feeling unlucky. Despite this setback, he grudgingly extends gratitude to Reinhardt, recognizing that Reinhardt remained by his side in the area and intervened to save him from monster attacks. Reinhardt downplays the significance of his actions, brushing off Stephen's thanks. However, Reinhardt secretly harbors additional intentions to incapacitate Stephen once more. As Reinhardt proceeds to tidy up the ancient relic site, Stephen finds himself knocked out 3 more times. Reinhardt worries about potentially causing harm to Stephen, but remains confident in Stephen's ability to recover. Upon regaining consciousness for the 4th time, Stephen wonders that he has been vigilant but is unable to detect any threats. Sensing something awry, Stephen resolves to take supplements for his body once they return, attributing his strange sensations to fatigue or other factors. With Reinhardt's limitless bag already full, he decides to return for the remaining items at a later time. He suggests to Stephen that they should go back, noting that they've likely explored most of the paths. Stephen concurs with the suggestion. Meanwhile, the group gathers and proceeds to another location. While walking, Scylla walks beside Reinhardt and questions if he is a royal. Reinhardt dismisses the notion, stating that he is just a regular citizen. Scylla expresses disbelief considering Reinhardt's considerable capabilities. Reinhardt counters, explaining that even a regular citizen can possess skill. Scylla persists, noting that Reinhardt's natural demeanor often seems condescending. Perplexed, Reinhardt seeks clarification, prompting Scylla to explain further. Scylla tells him that he understands that Reinhardt needs to project confidence and assertiveness as a martial artist, but there are instances where his conduct could be perceived as talking down to others, particularly towards individuals like Edward, who is well over 40. Reinhardt comes to an understanding, realizing his behavior, as he recalls that he's only 22 in this life and should be more mindful. He casually mentions to Scylla that he's not accustomed to socializing, hence his lack of proper etiquette. After a brief walk, they enter another room. Stephen opens the door, revealing a terrifying monster. The sight shocks everyone, including Reinhardt and Scylla. This monstrous creature, known as the Grell Beast, captivates Reinhardt's attention. He struggles to recollect encountering such a creature in his past life within this dungeon. According to Stephen, this demon serves as the guardian of this place. Reinhardt ponders whether this monster has yet to be dealt with. Suddenly, the monster lets out a deafening roar upon sighting them. Reinhardt decides it's best for everyone to retreat for now, considering the challenge of confronting the monster with their current resources. As they prepare to leave, a knight screams, drawing Stephen's attention to the sword wielded by the Grell Beast. To their astonishment, it is revealed to be the demonic sword Alshin's. Stephen unsheathes his sword, prepared to confront the Grell Beast. However, Edward questions his decision, expressing concern about the impending danger. He suggests returning to their family to prepare now that they know the extent of what they're facing. Despite Edward's counsel, Stephen adamantly refuses to retreat. Upon witnessing the Alshin sword tainted by the monster, he becomes resolute, refusing to yield in his determination to reclaim it, even if it means confronting death itself. With unwavering resolve, Stephen commands everyone to raise their swords, readying themselves for battle. Stephen's men heed his command, ready to follow him into battle. Meanwhile, Reinhardt watches with annoyance, observing Stephen's reckless behavior. I hope that you liked today's video, and if you did, hit that like button, as today's like goal is 1,500 likes. Comment part 2 down below for the next part. Also, consider subscribing with the notification bell on to get notified as soon as a new video drops onto the channel. You can also join the channel to support me financially and watch videos before public release. I'll meet you in the next video. Until then, thanks for watching.